Hi guys, welcome to my kitchen. Today we are going to be talking about tips and tricks for baking pie crust. Recently I've gotten a big response on my food processor pie crust recipe. I have that link down below, so if you haven't seen it yet, hop on over there and get my recipe. But today we're going to talk about how to bake the pie crust, and there's a lot of basically tips for working with pie crust that will help you out and help you to have a better result when you're finished. I'm going to try to add chapters to the video for you. If I'm not successful at that, in the description below there will be timestamps for you of the different portions of the video, so you can just skip ahead to whatever you need. So we're going to talk about how to handle your pie dough first of all, and then we're going to talk about how to blind bake it and how to par bake it. So par baking is partially baking it, and blind baking is completely baking it before you put your filling in, and then just normal pie baking where you're just putting the dough in with your filling and cooking the whole thing for an extended period of time. Let's get started. First thing we're gonna do is take our rested pie dough. So this was made about 45 minutes ago. I put it into a little disc and put that in the refrigerator. I have mine wrapped in this bees wrap, which I think is really nice, but you can just use plastic wrap and it will be fine. First thing you're gonna wanna do is lightly flour your countertop. And I do mean lightly. You want to use as little flour as possible, but you also want to make sure that it's not sticking. And then we're going to take our rolling pin and just start rolling it out. We're going to work with it gently. And what I like to do is just kind of keep rotating it, because that also is going to help us to have it not stick. Except maybe to the rolling pin, because I didn't flour the rolling pin. Okay. And we're just going to keep rolling this out until it is the thickness that we want. I like to roll mine pretty thin, but you can roll it out to whatever thickness is indicated in your recipe, or just whatever thickness you prefer. Okay, so here's my rolled out dough. Of course, it's not exactly a certain shape. That's fine. What I'm looking for is the thickness. So that's a good even thickness for the most part, and I felt around the dough to make sure that most of it is that thickness. Now what I like to do to transfer it to my pie plate, well actually the first thing that I do is just measure to make sure it's gonna fit in my pie plate by just kind of hovering the pie plate over it to make sure I've rolled it thin enough. But then to transfer it, I just give it one fold, two fold, then it's nice and easy to pick up, and then you just unfold it the same way. So you just lay it in your pie plate and unfold it. And you just that easy. It's just that easy. Okay, now for working with it from here. What you want to do, instead of pressing it down with your fingers, like I have nails, so my nails are going to poke holes in the dough if I do that. So I'm just going to take a little bit off of this edge here where I have excess dough and kind of wad that up. And this is going to be my little presser. So I'm going to use this to press it into the pie plate and just make sure that it's nicely sealed around the bottom there. Beautiful. Now if you have any little spots where you need to fill in extra dough, you can just take some off of the excess, take a little bit of water on your finger and paste it in there, and it'll be just fine. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go around with my kitchen shears and cut off some of this. You don't want to cut off all of it because you want to leave some room there for shrinkage. Shrinkage is something that you're going to end up dealing with pie crust. You want to leave about probably 1/2 inch on there. because it will shrink back somewhat. Also, if you are adding a top crust to it, you can actually just wait on this. You don't have to cut it off before you put it in the oven. You can just go ahead and cook it with this, and then when it comes out of the oven and has cooled, then you can just take a knife and go around the edge and kind of shave it off. The next thing we're gonna do is dock the dough. So you can buy specific dockers, which will have like little tongs or little tines on it, and it will roll, and that will dock your dough so that it has room for the air to escape and vent out of there. But the old-fashioned way is just doing it with a fork. So you just wanna go around and do lots of little fork pricks in the bottom and in the sides. I try to be a little bit more careful in my sides because I don't want them to pull off too much. Now, what we are going to do with this guy is put him in the fridge for about 5 minutes just to let it rest. One of the biggest things with pie dough is you want it to remain cool. Keeping it cool will keep the butter that's in there cool, and then when it hits the hot oven, what that's gonna do is do some scientific thing, and it's gonna make it flaky. I don't know the science part of it, but it makes it flaky. So you want to keep it as cool as possible until you transfer it to the oven. So this is going to go in the fridge for about 5 minutes, and I'm going to roll out my next pie crust, and then I'm going to bring you back so that you can see how to blind and par bake them. Okay guys, so these just came out of the fridge, and you can tell after you've been working with the dough, it does get more warmed up when you're working with it, but you can tell when you take it out of the fridge that it's a little bit more stiff, and that's good. That's what we want. So these two, I'm going to par bake one, which is partially baking, and I'm going to blind bake the other one. Blind baking is when you bake the crust completely before you add your filling. So a blind baked crust would be for something like a cream pie, chocolate pudding pie, something like that. And then a partially baked one would be if you wanted to get the crust a little bit done before you put your filling in it, and then you're cooking it for less amount of time in the oven. So what we're gonna do for both of these is put some parchment paper in them. Just the easy way to do the parchment. Just kind of fold it in the middle and then open it up in there. And then what you wanna do is fill this with either pie weights. I'm gonna be using pie weights for one of them.
Don't eat those.
Do not eat those.
Break your
and
teeth.
If you're using pie weight, well, honestly, if you're using anything, you've got to make sure that you put the parchment paper in here. Otherwise, what you're putting in here for your weight is gonna bake into the crust, and then you're gonna be eating that. So obviously with all this extra here, I'm gonna cut this off because I don't want that extra bit in my oven. If you have pre-cut parchment squares, that would be great for this. Now what you wanna do, this one's a little bit shy of that, but that's okay in this situation. But what you wanna do is you really want to fill up all the way on your pie with whatever your weight object is, because the pie crust will shrink, but if you have the entire thing weighted down, then it really has nowhere to go, so it won't shrink as much if you fill it up with whatever your weight is. So I'm just going to set that aside while we do the same thing on this one. And for this one, I'm going to use some rice, which is an easy alternative if you don't have pie weights. If you don't bake often, you might not want to invest in pie weights. You can use rice, just don't eat the rice afterwards. Just save it only for your baking purposes. And that's not enough, so I brought my regular rice out too, because we want to fill it up.
Do you do that so it doesn't get burnt on the inside?
Nope, we do that so that the pie crust doesn't shrink on us.
Okay.
So these are ready to go into our oven. We're gonna put these into a 425-degree oven. That is pretty high, but that heat shock, like I said earlier, that is gonna be what helps the flakiness to come out. So these are gonna go in here for about 15 minutes, and then I will bring you guys back. Welcome back, guys. So it has been 15 minutes. I am taking the crusts out now. And what you want to do, I like to have a bowl handy to put this in. You just want to lift up your parchment, and truthfully the parchment's probably not even hot. But you just want to be careful on this step. Just lift it up, take it off, and put it in there. We have one little bubble, but aside from that, it's pretty good. A little bit of shrinkage around here because I didn't have it fully filled up, but that's okay. But we'll go ahead and use this one as our blind bake. So this one's gonna go back in the oven. If you want to add an egg wash to your completely baked pie crust, now would be the time to do it. I'm not going to add an egg wash on that one. It's going to end up being a custard pie, so I don't really want it to have that egg wash finish on it. But you can do just a whisked up egg with a tablespoon of water, and that will be a good egg wash for you and make it nice and shiny and pretty.
Shiny.
Now on this one, that is really trying to escape. I'm gonna do the same thing. Just gather up our little parchment paper. Take it off. So this one is gonna be our partially baked crust. And so I am going to just let this cool before I do anything else with it. Before I fill it with the filling, we're just gonna let this set on a cooling rack and just cool down completely before we do anything else with it. This one in here is gonna be cooking for about another 15 minutes, really until the color is right on it. So I'll bring you back to see that one when we pull that one out. Okay guys, so this is my blind baked crust. I didn't put an egg wash on it, as I said. If I had, this would be a little bit darker. And if you prefer the inside a little bit darker, you can absolutely just leave it in a little bit longer. But that is gonna be my crust. It's gonna be really, really delicious. We're gonna let that cool and then fill that. I hope that this video has been helpful for you guys. If you do have any other questions, please leave me a comment below. If you would like to use the pie crust recipe that I'm using, it is linked below. So thank you so much for watching my channel. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day and enjoy baking. Bye-bye.